And you are live.
Fabulous. We are calling this meeting of the Akron Civil Rights Commission to order. The first item on our agenda is approving minutes, but I think that we have an issue with minutes. You'll remember that we did not have our secretary present last time, and we kind of made a decision to ask if she would do them based on the recording. In reviewing our rules, actually, John reminded us during the week by email that our rules actually say that we should designate someone at the beginning of the meeting to take minutes in lieu of the secretary at the beginning of each meeting. So we'll have to figure out what to do about the past meetings. But the past two, for which I think we still don't have minutes, but for right now, do we have a volunteer to take minutes for today's meeting?
I would volunteer, but I'm on the agenda all over the place and don't think that I could reasonably capture what I'm talking about and talk about it. Is there somebody, maybe Brant, who's not on the agenda who could?
Ooh, let me see who is on the agenda. Esther and you, and then we're going to talk about the retreat, which is kind of everybody. So, and wait, actually, let me just think. Do we have a quorum? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, we do. Okay. That leaves Dr. Rice and Nanette Pitt.
I'm here.
And who's here?
Gina.
Ah, there you are. Oh, I see. You're just not on video. Gina Kay is here as well.
My name should be in the box. I would take notes today, but I am in traffic and can't take my hands off the wheel. That wouldn't be a good idea.
That would indeed not be a good idea.
Well, I would offer to do them unless Dr. Rice would like to.
I guess I could have never done this before for this group, but I guess I could.
I think I have once. I've done minutes before at any rate, so I would be glad to if you're feeling hesitant. So there we go. I'll take them.
Could you? And then maybe
Sure.
Once those minutes come out, I'll have a model to follow.
No, don't necessarily use mine as a model, but I'll gladly try this time.
So we're going
Everyone
to
can give me feedback.
Okay.
We're going to consider that a selection of a secretary by acclamation. So Nanette will take minutes for us. Thank you so much. We have some old business. Both of them are cases that were in some stage of conciliation. Nanette, do you have the agenda that might help you sort of?
I don't have it right in front of me. And what time did we call the meeting to order?
Oh.
4:36.
4:36?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I'm going to grab the minutes quickly from my email.
The agenda.
Thank you. That's it. Sorry.
Yes.
You
So-
may want to take attendance.
What's that?
You may want to take attendance.
Oh, you might want to take attendance. Right. That would also go into the minutes for who's
Yes.
here.
Yes. Yeah, I have a screenshot so I don't forget.
We have the 5 of us on the screen, and then Commissioner Maddox, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that is what we have.
Excellent.
So Commissioner Thomas on complaint 19 ACRC 0013. Is there a status report?
I'm going to
Yes.
interject at this time and make a motion that we move into executive session on this conciliation report. And I'm doing so under authority of Rule 12 of our commission rules and invoking additionally Rule 17, which covers the confidentiality of conciliation. Looking for an ability for both Commissioner Thomas and later in the agenda myself to be able to actually report on the substance of these confidential conciliation processes without breaching the very thing that we as conciliators promise to the parties.
So there's a motion to move into executive session. I'm reviewing Rule 12 myself. The commission may hold executive session only after a majority of the quorum determined by roll call vote to hold an executive session for the sole purpose of the consideration of, and one of the items here is well, now let's see which item here. Conferences with an attorney, that's not this. Matters required to be kept confidential
That
by
is the
federal law or state statute or any other manner.
Okay.
So Commissioner Holland, which of these is the authority to do this? Actually, you know what? Let me share the rules on my screen so that other people can see them.
Sure.
Because I know that we're not.
And there's a whole wormhole of authorities. So we'll be moving first from our commission rules into the statute itself,
Right.
and then into revised code 121.
Wait a minute. Here we go. So are you seeing this page with the rules on them?
No, we're seeing the June meeting.
Oh, I see. Yep, you're right. Hold on a second. Actually, why don't I move it over?
Okay.
There we go.
So wait a minute.
You bounced it out of the way again.
There it is.
So okay, we started at rule 12, but then move on down to rule 17.
Okay. So here's rule 17 about conciliation.
And the other provision about conciliation is actually in chapter 38, subsection 10, lowercase d.
You're talking now about the ordinance.
Yes.
Yes.
So let's see here. We're gonna open
You
this.
repeat that again, chapter 38.
38, subsection 10d, as in dog.
Thanks.
So now I'm going to. And let me just see which of these is.
Right about in the middle. There it is.
I'm just thinking, I think this one is the revised.
That's the one. And there's actually an even later version, but
So remind me what we're looking at, 38?
yep, 3810D, I believe. Am I right about that, Esther?
Yes.
3811, 3810D. The commission shall not make public information concerning efforts in a particular case to eliminate by conciliation. So this information by conciliation is not supposed to be public unless the commission determines that disclosure is required by state or federal law. So I'm just trying to sort of compare that with the rules. Obviously, the ordinance is more Eve or Ellen, Can you provide any guidance on this, on what the appropriate step is here?
I just, something that, and Eve, of course, feel free to jump in, but that would help me orient is what are you about to do? So you're going to report on the conciliation efforts to the entire commission?
Correct.
Okay, and is that something that is anticipated in the rules? My concern is that
It's never been done before. So I honestly, I don't think that it was anticipated at all.
so I think that my concern would be that, you know, there are various roles for different commissioners at different stages of the process. And then ultimately, there's always been an attempt to keep at least a quorum of members, or, you know, 3, however many members have to sit through a hearing, not involved in the early stages in order that they would be, you know, neutral and coming into a hearing without having all of the background information that, say, the investigator, the commission member who did the investigation, or the commission member who did the conciliation had. So I'm not sure that we've had a conciliation report for that. We have had that.
Cindy Chrisman offered a conciliation report once, and we did not go into any detail for that exact reason that you're busy outlining, Ellen.
Right. So, yeah, and I'm not sure what it is that you would like to share that you feel would be against the spirit of confidentiality, but I'm concerned that sharing that information would
With the
contradict
commission.
that idea of keeping the remainder of the commission members out of the weeds, for lack of a better descriptor. And I apologize for my very generalized conversation, but I haven't looked through the rules. I wasn't prepared to, you know.
Because because those commission members may serve on the hearing.
Right. If the conciliation ultimately is not successful and this case does go to hearing, the idea would be that they would not be privy to all the information that you are privy to as being intimately involved in that conciliation process.
And I'm just looking at the rules for the reporting of the conciliation, where it says if there's an agreement, right, then that's considered by the commission and can be approved. I think that then if there's not an agreement, then I think the idea is that it doesn't come to the commission. So it kind of depends, I think, what the report is going to be, because if there's not an agreement, then I'm not sure what's contemplated exactly with regard to a report. But I kind of guess, I'm kind of intuiting maybe, and you can straighten me out, that there are, that these 2 cases that have gone to conciliation in some form, that you're perhaps seeking guidance or wanted to report in some other way. And I'm not sure that we have a good process for you to do that, you know, because of the confidentiality part that Ellen just talked about, that we're trying not to have the other commissioners sort of disqualified, right, from hearing this if it comes up later, because the conciliation, you know, we're not supposed to know what goes on in that if we are going to hear it later. And this may be a hole in our rules, right, that we didn't, like, we need to talk about the conciliation, but we don't have a good process for doing that without compromising the integrity of the sort of commission process. So I am open to suggestion about how to handle this. But I think, do people kind of understand what the tension is?
Yes, and Chairman Lee, well, if we could table that motion, and I'll offer this very succinctly. I do not have a report at this time. I anticipate having a report. The process in the broadest sense of the word has been initiated, and I would have a report that is expected next commission meeting. So I will refrain from making further comment. Number one. Number two, in the process of going through these various things, there may be questions that need to be answered by whether the law department and addressed by the commission regarding that we can address at another time, not specific to this conciliation, but specific to how we operate via the rules, and how the commissioners themselves, both personally, joint and severally, are regarded as public officials in the context of doing this work. So
let me just kind of
Attorney,
in the interest of time and not having you repeat that. As to the first part, you started off suggesting that we table the motion and that you give your report. And can we?
and my report is that there's not a report, that
Right.
it's been initiated in the broadest sense of the term.
I just want to sort of, can we as a commission consider that to have been done, that the motion was tabled and that your report was given as you stated? I'm going to ask unanimous consent that that be considered so. Is there an objection? All right, with no objection, then that we're going to consider that motion, the motion to go into executive session to have been tabled and the report given as stated.
And am I correct in understanding that that motion was never seconded?
I think
correct.
that's right.
So procedurally, it was not
We
actually.
skipped a step. Yeah, it wasn't actually a
Okay.
motion.
And I think that some of the general issues we might consider when we get to the agenda item about a retreat, because I think that one of the things that's going on is that there's a need for us to update our own familiarity with our rules, our process, and sort of how we carry out some of these things that we are just now getting to sort of to happen for more than the first time or the second time, right? I have lost track of sort of who came on when and when we sort of last did a sort of a training or a review of sort of underlying rules and laws for this commission. But I know that we do have at least one sort of pretty new member for whom I'm guessing all of this is pretty might be a little mysterious, right? Sort of all the rules and things that we are delving into. So let me see where we are procedurally.
If I could,
Yes, please.
as we go forward, I do think that with respect to the next meeting, one thing that we can do, putting aside the retreat, is just to review Rule 17 so that there is a clear understanding as to what you are going to do in the open meeting with respect to conciliation and the pieces and parts of that rule. So it may behoove us to review that, and then the next meeting we can go forward. But it is important, the confidentiality of certainly the conciliation is an important component of that process. So I think we need to review that and just be clear about what are the steps of the conciliation that we're looking at, and then how does that get brought before the commission?
So where we are procedurally, I think, is that we are on we have heard the report from Commissioner Thomas. And the next item is the conciliation from Commissioner Holland. And I don't know if this discussion has helped us figure out what we're going to do on that.
I'm going to attempt to give you a status while honoring obligations under the statute and promises made to interested parties.
And before you begin, I would say that to the extent that the complainant and the respondent have not actually reduced their, whatever you have done to writing, perhaps it would just be more broadly speaking, a report as to where you are procedurally with them. And then perhaps at the next meeting, to the extent that there is a writing, then that could be placed on the agenda and considered by the commission at a future meeting.
That's pretty much where I'm coming in on this too, and thank you for that. Just so everybody knows what we're talking about, 20 ACRC 00003 and 00004 are related cases. They both involve the same complainant, Regina Barham. Ms. Barham asserts a variety of bases for claiming discrimination in her employment, including age, race, and gender. Although she does not articulate or does not literally check the box for retaliation, she articulates a claim for retaliation in the face of her complaint as well. She brings these two separate charges against two separate entities. One is Janitorial Services, Inc., which is an Akron company and employer, which was actually her paycheck employer, if you will. By that, I mean, this is the company from whom she received her compensation for work performed as part of a services contract for the benefit of a second corporate entity by the name of Meggitt Aircraft Braking Systems. This is also an Akron company, functions as an employer of others. In this instance, it had a service contract with Janitorial Services, Inc., which in turn involved performing janitor functions on the Meggitt aircraft premises. Ms. Barham lost her position after approximately 4-5 months of satisfactorily working there. You will recall that this case goes back to early fall of last year. This case was assigned for investigation to Latonda Mobley. I received the case, and this was following the March 2021 meeting for the purpose of conducting conciliation, if that could be had. Both respondents were contacted. Things happened.
Commissioner Holland, actually, I'm remembering that we, in one instance, there was conciliation following a finding of probable cause or reasonable cause. And there was a conciliation where we tried to do conciliation prior to a finding, I think. And I just want to straighten out which one this is.
This is not that one.
Okay.
This actually was the instance where we issued reasonable cause findings in both cases. Notice went out to the respondents, and the conciliation efforts ensued. This is where this gets tricky, and this was the reason for my interposing my motion for executive session prior to Commissioner Thomas's report and her matter, because there are issues procedurally about these two related cases and about conciliation in general that I think do have significant bearing on commission operations. I would only add that I would like to see an opportunity for us to, as commissioners who will inevitably wear many hats over the course of time, also like to get into some conversation about how we can perhaps find uniformity in communications with respondents, with their counsel, allowing us perhaps to, have a greater sense that we are operating in an official capacity. It's difficult to carry out these roles. The other thing that I want to make sure we don't lose sight of is access to various resources that exist for investigators and, assuming things go as they have in this case, eventual conciliators. And I would assume then at some point, he or she who actually tries the case on behalf of the commission to a hearing officer, we need access to existing materials, resources, and so forth, that we can be doing this the same way and in a way that is professional and logical and linear. So thank you. I will hopefully have a way to give you further information. The only other thing I want to add is that you will recall that I believe it was the April meeting, and in a previous meeting to that we had some spirited conversation about whether and when we would permit withdrawal of a charge by a complainant. And this necessarily implicates the promise of confidentiality and a conciliation. In a sense, it was not a problem that we could anticipate back when these conversations were had, that a central term to reaching a resolution would be confidentiality. And now we find ourselves in a place where we hope for approval of a confidential settlement, and yet the approval by a change to our own rules could involve asking the person recommending approval to reveal the confidential terms. Make sense?
Yes, I mean, this is, I think we're getting into a level of detail that we have sort of not fully explored when we wrote the rules up. And so, we need to adjust now that we are confronting where the glitches are, where the inconsistencies are. And I want to apologize, and maybe this, if that is the end of your report, I mean, this flows into, I think, the next thing.
Yep.
Because on new business, there is, I did not hear that there was a new complaint that came in within the last month, I don't think. And so the next item on our agenda anyway is discussion of a retreat. And the reason why that is on the agenda is because of exactly this, right? We have started to recognize that we need some standards and processes for investigation and conciliation. And one of the things I want to share with you in this part of the discussion is that, in some ways I've been remiss because we have gone through some of this. We had a briefing from the OCRC about investigation, and they shared documents with us. We have a number of other, we came up with a form for an investigation plan. But we have not just been very consistent about onboarding new commissioners, sharing with them the resources and where they are. I will tell you right now that you should all have access to a Google Drive. Actually, I'm going to put the link right into the chat here. But I'm going to share a screen with you and show you what is there. Let's see, this one, I believe. So this is a Google Drive, and the owner of it is, we set this up when we first got started. And the owner of it is not any one of us. There's an account that's Akron Civil Rights Commission at gmail.com that is kind of intended to be kind of a generic Civil Rights Commission identity. And there's this drive, and this drive has been shared. The commission documents folder anyway has been shared with all of you, although I don't know that you were all notified about that. And what is in here, first of all, in important documents folder, the copies of the rules, the ordinances that passed that put us into place. And this investigation folder is the sample form that we came up with that just sort of lays out who are you going to talk to and when did you do it, and what documents did you look for. So some standard things that might have been useful that we have kind of been neglecting to do a good job of sort of sharing with people who are actually undertaking those tasks. In my view, what this all points to is the need for, a lot of this folder was organized by a research assistant of mine, right, which is basically subsidized labor from the university to the city, to sort of put all of these things in the right folders, organize the complaints. If you'll see here, one of the folders here has the complaints organized by year, and there's also a spreadsheet that shows what has happened to them. The spreadsheet I do not think is entirely up to date. And there's probably a better way to lay this out in order to know what's going on with each of these cases. And so to me, where I was headed with this is that to me, this points to the reason this commission really is getting to a point where we really need a staff person. Since I've already noted that I'm stepping down from the chair, I think there's no self-interest in me saying you could have a part-time chair, right? If their job is going to be to coordinate all of this. We have previously talked about the possibility of kind of petitioning city council for a budget line, right? To sort of more than the per meeting payments, to be able to hire somebody. When we went through this discussion last time, part of the discussion was, well, exactly what do you need? And who can we find in the city on staff that can handle that? And the resolution at the time was that the law office would provide, a certain amount of support, that we were put in touch, I think, with someone to help with marketing. And I think that when we have marketing ideas, the city is able to help with those. But now I think what we're talking about is really commission work, right? Administering, keeping track of the rules, making sure that commissioners are aware of what's available. And, it may just be that the next chair can do it and be willing to do it. And will have a better recollection than I about what needs to happen especially for new commissioners. But in some way, either through more frequent retreats and reinforcement and training, right, or through some kind of dedicated staff who can sort of stay on top of all this for us. It seems to me like we are in need of some kind of assistance in that way. So that's why this item is on the agenda, right? Maybe we could start with a retreat to sort of talk about some of these, try to bring everybody up to speed on what we already do know about how to conduct an investigation, and what our procedures actually say, and even beyond that, sort of what the legal standards are, for what we do, which is, when there's a reasonable cause to find that discrimination has occurred. So I'm just going to open the floor for comments or thoughts about how to proceed.
So Chairman Lee, thank you for putting it all so succinctly. And I guess I want to chime in because I have been really, really dazzled by the level and speed of response to issues that I've had from the law department. And, here's the thing. This is one board of, I don't even know how many. Eva's on this call, so she could probably tell us, exactly, or Ellen could certainly, but that's maybe the most hardworking, versatile law firm around. And they've been, John and Yamini both, and more recently Eve, who I've just gotten to know, have been super responsive. And that is great. But I'll tell you something, if I had cases like the ones that I've been working on all the time, or if 2 or 3 other commissioners had cases of the complexity that I've been working on at the same time, it's just not possible without having our own dedicated people and without all of us having sort of a uniform understanding of how these things work. So Esther and I have talked, Nanette and I have talked about, the need for training, the need for, for getting on the same page. And I love this. In one of my recent and many and frequent consultations with John York from the law department and talking to him about a training program, he reminded me that this would, of necessity, be a public meeting. It would be, that there is no, excusing from the sunshine laws, this kind of training. And Esther had a brilliant response to this idea, which was, I felt such a smart way of reaching sort of our ongoing, dual identity position, which is to, okay, we can't have it small, so let's go really big. Let's use this as an opportunity to train the whole community. Mandatory attendance for commission members. Let's do it at the Knight Center. Let's do it somewhere big enough that anybody who wants to understand how to articulate a claim for discrimination can learn how to do so from people who know how to do it. Anybody who wants to find out how you defend a claim of discrimination can find that out too. There can be an immersive, but obviously time is limited, general overview of what the law of proving a discrimination claim is. There can be an opportunity to meet and hear from, if this is desirable, current Civil Rights Commission members. This could be a really wonderful, big opportunity to do all the things that we all want to do. We could be raising up the level of our own professionalism, but we could also be raising up the understanding of equal opportunity for our community and beyond.
Thank you. Other thoughts or reactions?
This is Commissioner Maddox. I think that would be a really cutting edge opportunity. Not all cities have their own city civil rights commission. So we're kind of ahead of the game in that regard. But I think to Commissioner Thomas's idea of making this training available to the community, it's sort of killing 2 birds with 1 stone, but I just think that would be a very novel and helpful idea in this climate of discussion about equity and so forth, is to let the community be aware. It will achieve one of our other goals of community education, as well as meeting our own objective as commissioners to be more informed. So I think it's a great idea.
The only thing I would add is that in the spirit of this is truly a kind of unicorn organization, although the temptation is always to bring in an existing other bunch, to come in and teach something. When I was outside counsel for the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, the urge was always to bring in the EEOC. When I worked for EEOC, we always wanted to bring in the Justice Department. We're always kind of, bringing somebody else in. We have a great deal of expertise in this body, but also in our community. We have a lot going for us, and I don't think we necessarily have to turn this into something where we take a passive role. Brant, you taught an international audience about racism last fall. In all due modesty, I've been practicing equal employment law for 34 years. Esther is a phenomenal lawyer who served as a magistrate for a million years. We've got Nanette, whose activism and leadership, Dr. Rice, Gina Kay, the list goes on. This is a stellar group of people, and we all have other folks in the community who we know to be experienced representatives of individuals and respondents. It's an opportunity for us to really establish this as a professional operation.
I have not been watching, but I see that some people actually have hands up. I think so. I apologize.
No, it's okay. I took mine down. Yep.
Ellen.
I'll defer to Commissioner Thomas, who's on the commission. If you'd like to go first, I can save my comments.
Okay, I don't know how to make that hand go away, everyone. So lower hand. Okay, that's how you get that. Thank you, Commissioner Holland, for raising this. I want to backtrack to make sure that everyone is clear that when Commissioner Holland mentioned that she and I spoke, and she spoke with Commissioner Pitt, that we did so individually without impinging upon the rules of discussing ACRC business in a way that would violate those rules. I love the commission. I love the idea of the commission. I know that through some of the work that we are now wading into, things are going to get complex, and they have gotten complex. And part of our charge by statute is to educate the public, educate complainants, and educate ourselves. And while there are guardrails to prevent our duties from becoming shielded from the public, I think the logical response is, okay, well, if we're going to put it out there, let's put it out there. Let's raise everyone's acumen regarding civil rights, regarding the rules. So the rules, the paradigms, the legal challenges, so that we are doing that education of others and ourselves. And I wholeheartedly agree with Commissioner Holland's statements, which is, this is an awesome group, and the work that has been done from its founding to now is exceptional. And so as we are looking for ways to continue the work in the spirit that it was intended, maybe this is one of those leaps that we take. It's not a blind leap. As you all might recall, in February, I participated in a CLE that was co-sponsored by the Akron Canton Barristers and the OCRC, and Bradley Dunn and I did a CLE. you know, it seemed like, oh, that was months in the planning. No, it was 2 weeks in the planning, and it was very nerve-wracking to do, and oh my gosh. But once that Band-Aid was ripped off, it was surprising, the response, as well as the level of engagement from the 15, the 20 attorneys or so, I can't remember, who attended, who paid to attend. And so there is some level of precedent for, let's talk, you know, in my part of the presentation might be perceived as dry because I just went through the statute with a little commentary. But I think that collectively we can both exercise our voices, bring in outside voices, and perhaps make it a community event with continuing education credits, and to strengthen our relationships with other partners or other groups in the community.
We're always looking as lawyers for opportunities to pick up CLEs, and free CLEs are, I can't even tell you, it's like a buy one, get one free pizza for lawyers. Both Esther and I, and I'm guessing very
I
likely.
put that in the minutes, Commissioner Holland.
Yeah, that's going in the minutes. Pizza, buy one, get one free pizza. This really does have potential for attracting a very big audience, and it actually could be a ticketed event, and maybe should be. Perhaps that's, you know, one way that we can approach some of our needs, you know, for, you know, commission support.
So, Ellen, I actually have a comment to make that includes a question for you. So I'm gonna sneak mine in first. And that is that I love the idea, and one of the things I love about it is that if we're gonna pitch a training for the community of lay people, right, that's the right level, because I want to kind of remind us, you're not required to be a lawyer to be a commissioner. And lawyers have a lot of standard litigation practices that they do that we don't necessarily need to do, right? I want us to run as a citizen commission and to have our procedures be operating at that level of you know, of formality or informality, right? And so, I mean, I think that we need to tighten things up to the extent that we write that we need to in order to make sure that our record is good, but we don't necessarily need to lawyer up, right? Because we are not, I mean, you know, thank you and much gratitude to the lawyers on the commission who are helping us with all kinds of insight. But also not necessary that everybody, right, have that. So we need our investigation process to be a process that non-lawyers can carry out, right? Our commissioners who are not lawyers should be able to do these things just as well. But that's the part that leads to a question is, of course, about cost. And that's one of my questions for Ellen, which you may not have an answer for today, is about sort of what kind of thing can we be thinking about with regard to that?
Thanks. So the first thing I just wanted to note, and I'm certainly not intending to second guess legal advice that John York may have given you regarding what has to be done in an open session, but I do think you could tailor a training to be like an information gathering session that would not need to be, it would not be considered commission business that would be required to be done in open session. So I think we have done that with this group before. We've certainly done that with other commissions. We do that with city council. You know, if it's purely to gather information and to learn, and it's not related to any particular case, that's something you can do behind, you know, in private session. Additionally, you can always conference with the attorneys to get legal advice, including how your rules work and how the statute works. if you're asking for legal advice, that can be done, in executive session. So I just wanted to keep that avenue open. I'm not sure, again, how much conversation you had with John. I'm sure he was giving you good and correct advice. But the other thing my suggestion is, and this is just me speaking, on behalf of the administration, what might be most helpful is if there was some sort of meeting of just this group, that was a retreat of sorts, that was more intended to be, what do we want to see? Again, what is our ideal next step for the commission? And this would be the way for the commission to give voice to that as the members who have the most experience and knowledge and, who were clearly appointed because of your, backgrounds, to say, we think the next version of the Akron Civil Rights Commission should be this. And maybe that's an appointed staff member, a full-time or part-time chair, someone who's an investigator. Maybe the need is simply to have someone who does the investigations and this body receives the reports of that, as opposed to doing the investigations themselves. So whatever, you guys would see fit as a recommendation, I think that might be really helpful, because that might dictate what the next large public piece looks like, because you may have support at that point, you may be, or have asked for support at that point, which may increase our ability to make an event like that successful, and also may be able to tailor that training for you to the new role, if some sort of limited role for the members of the commission. So that's just my, what might be helpful to the mayor and city council in looking at, potentially modifying the way the commission functions, is for this group to make, some kind of a formal recommendation on that. And I think that might be accomplished well through some kind of a retreat or a meeting that's just for that purpose. That's my 2 cents.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
To echo what Ellen was just saying, I think that depending on what is described and desired is an analysis of, then is it a public meeting or is it something else? So I think that just being sure that, whatever it is, certainly, we at law are happy to do that research to figure that out, to look at what it entails. The other comment is that it may be that you wish to, it is the moment to do the inventory, so to speak, of where you are with respect to your operations. And perhaps there is a small group that wants to give some thought to, procedural operations, to onboarding, to a number of those things, but even just the procedural side, and then work on that slowly to, for example, update forms or to increase forms or to, look at the rules again. Now, here we have been operating and saying, what could we be adding to the rules? So perhaps there's a small committee that is just working on rules, and then that committee can certainly work in tandem with law if there are legal questions about, perhaps some proposed amendments to those rules. So, just some thoughts there.
Commissioner Lee, I would like to move, let me say this, as much as I support and endorse the idea of a larger gathering and a public training, I think it will be wonderful for us to offer. I think that initially I would like to move that we, under the provision that Ellen laid out for us, I would like to suggest that we plan a executive session meeting or training, taking advice, looking at our rules, doing some of these things procedurally, and then giving any support to the newer commissioners that are needed in that process, as we did before with our past training that we did. And further, I would like to offer to host that if a space is needed. We have a large hall at First Church where I would be happy to host you all if a setting were needed to host the event, this in-house event.
I would offer a second to that motion, and I would say that we should do it ASAP.
We have a motion and a second, and other discussion.
If I may,
Yes.
I wish that I could tell you more about where I am and the matters that I'm working on. You know, this is one of the many topics that I hope that we can work through as the smart, hardworking group we are. Alas, I cannot. But I will tell you that though, and this is not me exercising a personal or professional privilege here, far from it. I have spent enough time in rooms with lawyers to know exactly what they're good for and what they're not. I really appreciate and understand the perspective that we should make this very user-friendly and very lay-friendly. However, it has been my observation, not just in my years of doing this out there, but in my comparatively brief time on this commission, that at the end of the day, there is an expectation of procedural propriety, that there is an expectation that we will know and understand what the law is and what the, not just the complainant, but what the respondent is or should be entitled to. And this is a very serious thing. So even as we endeavor to really throw the doors open and make this easy and interesting and available, we also have to understand that there's a responsibility here too, you know, that we really have to do this, as they say, by the book. And this raises to me, you know, another thing that I don't see on the agenda, and we have not agreed in any way, shape, or form to talk about, but you know, the responsibility that we all have to show up and to do the work and to complete what we've agreed to do. We owe it, you know, to one another, but also to the process. Trust me when I tell you that I've been on all sides of these kinds of cases, and it's all well and fine to make these, you know, kind of simple, you know, so forth and so on. But if you are on the losing side of one of these cases, it is very deeply personal. And that's why we have to have rules that make sense and that protect people's rights. And we have to follow our rules. We have to do this right, or we're not helping.
Thank you for that. I don't think that we are at odds on this. We should go by the book, but I think the problem is that we have not had a book, or at least that we've not all read it, right? So we need to make sure that we are familiar with what the requirements are. You know, what I will do is work with John and Ellen and Eve to figure out exactly what we can do in a closed session, because I think that, you know, when Ellen suggested for educational purposes, my recollection when we had that discussion was that, you know, we brought Bradley Dunn in to talk to us and give us information about what they do, right? To the extent that we're hoping that this retreat kicks off a revisioning of what the commission is, I will just try to clarify, right, exactly what we can do in a closed session as opposed to in an open session. And I don't think that that is a barrier. We just, you know, we can do the visioning in a public session, and if that's required. I do think, though, that one of the things we need to consider as part of this bringing our standards up is meeting more often, right? We have cases that have gone on for, I've been sensitive that some of our cases have gone on for quite a long time. And there is a difficulty when we meet only once a month. I know that that is what you all signed up for when you agreed to be a commissioner, when they said, you know, we said that we only meet once a month. But it may be that the time has come for us to think about sort of meeting more often. And in particular, if we can pull together a an executive session to do some of this. We'll try to figure out the scheduling, and we'll send out some. We'll try to check with you to make sure that we find times that are where we're available. But we will go forward with that. So I think that we had a motion and a second, and then we've been doing discussion, right? Is there any further discussion on the motion? All right, so all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. And so we will be moving forward to plan an executive session to consider these things. All right. Thank you for that. I thought that was quite a productive discussion. On our agenda, we have a kind of a standing item about discussing projects to develop more community involvement and relationship building. Are there any reports on that front? Any commissioners who have been involved in some kind of community engagement that has not yet been reported on? I'm not seeing or hearing anything.
I had a question. I know that the PowerPoint that I know several members, Nanette and Nancy, I believe, were involved in putting together. If you guys had formally adopted or reviewed that as a commission, I thought it was a very useful document, and I'd love to put it on the website if you'd like, or do other things with it. So just wanted to, I couldn't remember if that maybe came up in the last meeting and I was not present.
No, actually, and Commissioner Pitt and I actually had an opportunity to talk about this before the meeting went live today, while we were just sitting here hanging out. I think that where we are, and Commissioner Pitt, maybe you and I can have a conversation about it offline. So here's what happened, in case anybody's late to this party. So I created the slides. Commissioner Pitt, who has a real talent for this, made them beautiful. There was an outstanding issue. Also, Commissioner Rice very helpfully pointed out a couple of things that somehow made it past my my smart computer that catches things. But the one thing that we were back and forth on a little bit was I think it was the second or third slide, and we have resolved that. So I think that what we can do, Ellen, if this sounds good to you, we can put our heads together, make sure we're working off the right version, get it to you, and do with it as you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah, great. I mean, I think, again, with whatever changes you guys make to it, I think it's a really helpful document. I'd love to, like I said, put it on the website and ultimately be able to share it with others who, may have interest in knowing what the commission does or how it works. So just let me know when it's the final version and I will do that.
Great, thank you.
And it's not my impression that any of this needs any kind of formal commission action, right? This is a PowerPoint that was developed that you can use. Okay. And is there anything else in the realm of community education or other support of the commission? Yes.
Sorry, I had another. So I know, I believe that Fair Housing Associates came to an earlier meeting of yours when City Council was considering adding the new provisions to the ordinance, which have now obviously been adopted and are in place. But I didn't know if there was any interest in doing any further or specific, maybe this information session could involve some information sharing from Fair Housing or another organization, just about how they believe this new provision would interface, how they would, assist potential complainants in the community, how educational efforts could be aligned or anything like that. Just suggesting again that anything that could be helpful in that regard, because this is obviously a new area of law for Akron for all of us, and hoping it to be successful and make sure that, again, especially on that education piece, that we're, aligned with the message of how this new section operates.
I think that's a great idea. I was just remarking the other day that on Facebook, there is something called Akron Canton Buy Sell. And if you want to get a real live up close and personal view of what source of income discrimination looks like, all you need to do is jump in there. And I suspect many other local publications of this sort. I saw one just at the end of last week. Section 8, not welcomed. We will check source of, even the language, we will check source of income. So I don't think we'll have much longer before there's a steady stream of complaints.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes. Based on Ellen's comment, it jarred my memory that when the Fair Housing sent out a flyer on constant comment to various people, and various people in my organization received that, and we discussed it. There may be an opportunity. Currently, there's the CARES money and home relief that is fortunately seemingly very plentiful in our community. And we have there's teams of people both here, both at Community Action, both at United Way, both at, Job and Family Services, that there is an opportunity to do some of the training or more information as informally or as formally as possible to address the people who are actually taking the information and interfacing with people subject to eviction or behind on their mortgages. So certainly I think that's an area that I'd be happy to develop, because I would just have to go like down the street around the corner. And certainly if I would be happy to talk about that with our staff who are referring people, who are processing those applications, so that they and to some of our outreach workers, so that they can assist and stand ready to help folks. So,
what this discussion brings up for me is at the very least, right, we need to change our complaint form to add source of income, right, as one of the basis of discrimination. The other thing, though, that Commissioner Holland, as you brought up, we do have the ability to bring actions on our own behalf, right? And if we wanted to send letters to people who are advertising no Section 8, right, we might think about whether that is something within our purview or desire, right, to do. And that would be, in some ways, we are in some ways at the whim of the good that we can do with regard to what complaints get filed, right? But things that we can do on our own volition, right? Those have the capacity for us to actually, right, take intentional action that we want to accomplish. So that is an avenue that we should explore going forward.
I totally agree, but it also bespeaks two earlier points that we've touched on today, which is we need to meet probably more frequently, because these things, they're practically written in disappearing ink. Housing ads, vacancy listings and so forth, they happen fast. It goes really fast. The other piece of it is that, this bespeaks the need for that support person, that support, letterhead, and, the ability to, get something out.
I think this would be a very good time for us to be considering a joint press release, maybe with Fair Housing Contact Service or with, I don't know. I mean, maybe that would make us look biased. I don't know, but a press release about this. And, I even think, like, could we buy an ad in the Akron Beacon Journal, or could we ask them for something that sort of makes a point about this? And could it appear on that page? should we have some sort of some notice that's appearing that says, hey, did you know? I mean, obviously in the right kind of language, but there are multiple ways that we could be reaching out to the community.
Or something on our website, or, you know,
Mhm.
are part of the website.
I see Ellen's hand is up.
Are you calling on me, Professor Lee?
She
I'm
is.
getting back in the classroom. So yes, I think, okay, so we did put out a press release when council adopted the legislation. So I can share that with you all, or we can get that in the file, because certainly it does reference this body as the body that would hear those complaints and directs people to the complaint form and everything, which certainly needs to be updated. But I would also just caution before we go with the ads and seek all these complaints that we are, again, considering those capacity and support issues first, and maybe addressing some of those before we seek an influx of complaints that we aren't quite, ready to handle from a logistical time, energy perspective. So I'm certainly, I would love to attend the retreat to the extent I could be helpful in those regards or provide my 2 cents. So any of those things are possible with the right resources.
All right, so we had an earlier report that there were no public comments to be read. So if there's nothing further on community education, my understanding is that what's on our plate right now is that I'm going to work with the law department to figure out the parameters of an executive session for us to educate ourselves about many of the things that we've discussed. And I will likely be in touch with some of you if you are interested in sort of being involved in the putting together of this session. Let me know. I'm trying to figure out how this gets done, right? If not, because some of this is administrative and I can work with the law department on it. Other things we might want to make decisions about as a commission. And so we're going to have to figure out exactly how that communication is going to happen, whether it's breaks the sunshine rules for us to send out an email poll or something. But we will have to handle that as it comes up. And then, you might look for scheduling requests that may come from somebody in the law department about when we can do this, because what I'm hearing is a desire to have this done relatively soon. And that to me that means right before the next monthly meeting, because one of the things we're going to probably talk about is how often do we need to meet. Anything else for the good of the order? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Holland.
Second, Thomas.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Well, thank you so much. We are adjourned.